Are unions democracy? Unions are great, aren't they? If ever there was the promise of workplace democracy for workers, then unions, many of which have their own pop songs, are the way to go. Or are they? In this episode, I examine why unions consistently fail to serve the workers and seem to dependably serve corporate interests. I had to use the word serve twice because Thesaurus.com didn't have an alternate, substitute, surrogate or different word I could use. In 1159 BCE, artisans of the royal necropolis were paid a little less than a month late. You can't pay people in months late, as that is not a real currency, and paying them a little less than a month late is even less real. Apparently, the scribe Ammanacht acted as shop steward, reminding local officials, and this is a direct quote, "No way, no more graves for no pay." Local officials acquiesced, and for that month the artisans were paid, but the next month, blow me if it didn't happen again. This time the workers put down their tools and marched toward the city shouting. I don't know what they shouted because they spoke ancient Egyptian, or as they would have called it, contemporary Egyptian. They protested and had a sit-in, preempting the strategy of modern university students whining about the lack of pencils or whatever it is that keeps students up at night. Local officials thought, "Oh, we know how to deal with this," and proceeded to give the workers pastries in the hope that that might placate them. That's right, dear viewer, the first employer pizza party took place in ancient Egypt, and like contemporary workers, the artisans were not impressed, proclaiming loudly, "We can't live on bread alone, and somebody should say so in about 1129 years' time." The workers struck illegally without a recognised union. No petition with 30% employee support for an election within a milieu of overly complicated labour relation laws for them. No, we will return to this important fact later. You'll notice perhaps, but especially now as I'm about to point it out, that unions and strike actions predate Marx and his easygoing early 90s pop rock hit Hazard County. For example, the Federal Society of Journeyman Cordwainers, "They made shoes, they were just one step up from Al Bundy," was formed in Philadelphia in 1794. So why are modern unions failing us? In 2013, a chap by the name of Richard Yesselson, writing about the concept of fortress unionism, wrote this: "So what we're going to do is sit on our hands and not do any new organising in unorganised areas. The disorganised can stay in a state of disarray. We need to hang on to our resources for the war chest, which might get used one day, but probably won't." He did write that, but using different words with a voice in his head that had more gravitas. Anyway, according to a paper released by Radish Research, look, I know, right, as a comedian, I am under some obligation to riff on the fact that a Radish research company is doing research in the unrelated field of unions I meant. Anyway, it's so obvious and thus beneath me that I refuse to pluck such low-hanging root vegetables from the joke tree. From 2010 to 2020, unions with around $30 billion in assets only committed 0.35% to strike funds. Unions, for the most part, are in rude financial health, which is quite odd given that union membership is declining in real terms, despite the recent hoopla surrounding Amazon and Starsucks. Unions make money, and not just from membership dues, but also from real estate, investments, and an overabundance of shares in pastry shops. 30 billion in combined assets. You could buy a hot root vegetable or two with that. Assuredly, the unions are spending money, just not where the workers want. I mean, is lobbying the government, which is hostile to workplace unionism, a worthwhile spend? How about the overall union employment rate falling by 19%, while union managerial positions increased by 28%? Management positions that carry a compensation of $125,000 per annum, which puts those managers in the top 10 percentile of earners. Is that how unions are supposed to work? Accumulating wealth for themselves by owning real estate and investments. It is a little, capitalist, isn't it? the very antithesis of what unions are supposed to be about, and fortress unionism isn't even the biggest problem facing the union members. The World Socialist News website, otherwise known as the Tankyville Telegraph or the Trotskyist Times, and Jacobin magazine, or Popular Marxistanics as I like to call it, have quite different views on the effectiveness of unions. Let's start with Jacobin. According to Jacobin, every union is Jesus Christ, and everything unions do are Jesus Christ turning loaves into fishes. Unions can do no wrong, and if they do, then the fault lies elsewhere. Jacobin is the apple polisher of unionism, and receives its life-giving sunshine directly from the rear end of organised labour. In contrast, World Socialist News website, or the Tanky Times as it's otherwise known, really don't think that much of modern unions. It's always, "This union pushes a sellout contract on these workers," or "This union is as corrupt as an old-style hard drive that dropped out of school at 15 and decided on a life of crime, questionable partner choices, methamphetamine and magnets," or "A new report published by Radish Re—" Oh yeah, covered that already, except they entitled that article American Trade Unions and the Parasites Who Run Them, and they're still pulling their punches, just in case you thought they were being tough on that kind of thing. The World Socialist News website talks about sellout contracts, but what is a sellout contract? Imagine, dear viewer, that you're a boat. Boaty McBoatface is your name, and you are in the sea of inflation. The sea of inflation rises, but you, being a boat, are anchored to the seabed, where the ocean goes to sleep at night. Fortunately, there's a union of lifeguards who are there to rescue you. So what they do is look at the rising sea and think, "The sea has risen at least 10%. Let's negotiate with Neptune to give the boat 0.1% more slack on the anchor road." Of course, this analogy starts to break down if the union actually procure a contract with an above-inflationary wage raise. Let's just take a moment to picture that. Any raise should be above and beyond inflation to be counted as such, but time after time unions do not provide wage raises in line with inflation. It seems as though unions bend over backwards to accommodate the corporations they are supposed to hold to account. My criticism of unions, as they are, can be summed up quite simply. As I have consistently stated, representative democracy is a sham, and it is no different when unions hold to this model. Fortress unionism and sellout contracts protect the status quo of the union bureaucracy. Bureaucracy, whatever its function, first seeks to preserve itself, often at the expense of the reason it exists in the first place. My second criticism of unions is that they exist within the system rather than being outside of it. The state's Byzantine laws surrounding them seek to hobble the voice and effectiveness of working people. Right-to-work laws, minimum service levels, etc. The state is going to state, but surely unions should be a bit more militant, and when I say a bit more, I mean a lot more. What would this look like potentially? An unfinished paper written by some members of the industrial workers of the World Revolutionary Syndicalist Union, that just rolls off of the tongue, in 2011 described their vision of direct unionism like this. Instead of focusing on contracts, workplace elections or legal procedures, IWW members should strive to build networks of militants in whatever industry they are employed. These militants will then agitate amongst their co-workers and lead direct actions over specific grievances in their own workplaces. That strikes me as a good start, but while the IWW might welcome anarchists, they are not an anarchist organisation. Shwani, September 13, 2023, and the South African Municipal Workers Union were 2 months into a strike. Striking workers torched 4 city vehicles and physically assaulted a scab water truck driver. Previous to this, 3 garbage removal trucks had been burned. This is the kind of direct action I condone and want to see more of. The same year, the US Supreme Court ruled against Teamster union members who walked off of the job with their trucks full of wet concrete. Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who, you'll remember, is an extreme conservative, wrote, "The union's actions resulted in the destruction of all the concrete that the workers had prepared that day, as well as the risk of foreseeable, aggravated, and imminent harm to Glacier's trucks." Thanks, Amy, you conservative beak. That was the entire point. Between the first strike recorded and the most recent labour action is a span of over 3,000 years. I would advise any worker to join a union despite the criticisms I have outlined. I would encourage any worker to form a union despite the fact that doing so will more than likely cost them their job. Did I mention laws protecting union activity are about as effective as a SpaceX rocket launch? You could do those things. Join a union or form a union. You and your cohorts could do direct actions too. Go on, ask for a pay rise and then burn your place of work down when they don't give you one, or even if they do give you one. Thank you for watching. Please dislike the video and do not subscribe to this channel. Mess with the metrics, that's the kinds of things I like to do.